Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon and welcome to the Post 72, How to Prepare a Submission to Transfer Your PhD Enrolment. Yes, this post is matched with our last one, both via request from the legendary Queen G. I hope you're well, Queen G. And as you might remember, last week we did that important homework looking at interiority, looking at who we are, our emotional state, our intellectual state, so we are prepared as a human to enact a transfer. Now, this week is different. This is very much presenting a professional facade, a professional response to your new university about why they should take you on, why they should transfer you. So this is formal, and this is professional, and this is about process. So I hope you enjoy today. And in many ways, to be honest with you, doing these types of deep professional tasks help all of us, I think, inside and outside of a doctoral program. So let's go for this. Now, please remember that universities that are considering taking you on, accepting the transfer, they get very little out of that transfer. They don't get the free or cheap labour. In the precariat workforce, they don't get the easy publications. They get a payday in the Australian system and in other national systems. And look, they're taking you on, and you know, most academics are pretty kind people. We're trying to take you on to help you, to solve your problems, okay? And yes, the completion payment as well. But we need to also remember, colleagues, that the most pleasant supervision, the woo, this is fun, this is great, the most pleasant supervision is in the first year. The most horrific supervision that drains life from one happens in the final 6 months. It is horrific for the students, it's horrific for the supervisor, it's horrific for the institution. So, you are asking a university to take a risk on you and your candidature when they have very, very little to gain. So what we're doing today is making the case. This is how you make the case in a professional way for the institution to consider your transfer. So I'm going to talk in some detail about the documents you need to prepare and how you should prepare them. So please remember, let's start everything. This is a risk mitigation day today. What we're trying to do is reduce the risk for the university that is considering your transfer. This is how you do it. 1, have you signed away your IP? Now, in the Australian legislation, students, high degree students, own their IP unless they sign it away, okay? So that means you've got it unless you've signed a document. You formally have to sign a document. Can I say there's one Australian institution in the group of 8 who knew this was a thing, that to admit a student, the student must sign away their IP at admission. Interesting. I would never ever do that. So that's interesting, but students, to be part of this posh university, decide to do that. So that's interesting. But if you have signed away your IP, you don't own the data. It's not yours. So to be frank, if you've signed away your IP, your transfer story ends now. It's over. And the only way you can, inverted commas, transfer is to move to another university and start another project. 2, demonstrate ethics and compliance to national legislation for research integrity. The easiest time to transfer, without a doubt, is after the data collection has been done. And you will therefore need to present to your prospective university, new university, a series of documents about ethics, data collection, data analysis. So we're going to need to see and cite all your ethics applications, your modifications, all the iterations of ethics we will need to see. If your transfer is to proceed, then one ethics committee in one university talks to another ethics committee in another university to ensure that everything is in place, compliance, movement of documents, movement of ideas, movement of data. Cool. Okay. Now, without that ethics clearance and without that institutional verification and sign-off, a transfer cannot take place. So unless the data sets have been gathered with iterative ethics approvals, no one is going to touch you because of the chance of an ethics breach. And I'll just put in here too, when we're doing international transfers, remembering that each national system has different ethics protocols, trying to get that to match can also be challenging. So when I've been doing transfers, say from one of the African nations, Nigeria is a great example. Nigeria, fantastically robust ethics protocols, very, very different from the Australian protocol. So it takes time to get those systems to match. But if all is well and these documents are in place, present them for verification and the huge hurdle is over. IP ethics, bang, we are winning. 3, you will need to present your current or close to full draft. Wherever your draft is at, your best draft, you will need to present that. And this is where you are dealing with a dean for the transfer, or whatever they're calling them these days, PVCs, Associate Vice Chancellors, whatever they're calling them these days. You're going to be dealing with the Dean of Graduate Studies for the transfer. And remember, I've held a lot of those roles for the last decade. And let me tell you what happens behind the facade. Yes, you're going to need a supervisor. The supervisor is crucial. If you haven't got a supervisor, then you've got no chance. But don't think that if a supervisor accepts you, that the transfer is in place. It can't be. And let me tell you what I do when a student approaches me with a transfer. The first thing I do before I take any of their time or bother any other colleague is I say, can you please present for me the full draft that you have now? And then I clear 3 afternoons and I sit on my clacker and I read that draft. So if the student, if you are making the case that you're going to need only 3 months or 6 months to complete your draft, when the previous university let you go, you lost your supervisor, expelled, whatever happened, then I need to see the work that you have done. Remember, there are plenty of people, thousands of people like me on planet Earth that do this sort of work. Now, I read a lot of theses. I read hundreds of thousands of words of theses every single week. So I know what an academic standard is. I really, really do. And I also know what work is yet to be completed and how long that work will, in a normative parameter, take. So remember that the university that is considering to grant you entry will not do so unless they assess the current state of your work. So you're going to have to present a draft. Now, if you're saying to the prospective university, oh, this is going to be a quick completion, we need to see that that's true. We can't take your word for it. And someone like me sits down, assesses the standard, assesses what's going on with the research, and assesses what are the tasks left to complete, task orientation, and what's the time required to complete them, time orientation. So remember, this needs to be a quick completion for the new university. 60, 70, 80% of the work has to be done, and we have to verify and check that that work has been done. Okay, 4, you are going to be asked uncomfortable and disturbing questions about yourself, your past, and your present. Now, after the work is assessed, the research is assessed, then you are being assessed. The researcher is being assessed. You'll be asked why you want the transfer. You're going to be asked what went wrong. And you've got to have answers to those questions, professional answers to those professional questions. So we're going to ask about your supervisor, what went right, what went wrong, the professional development that you did at your previous university. And also ask you about your expectations of us. What are your expectations of the new university post this transfer? Now, if we are living in an excuse and a blame culture, particularly just endlessly blaming other people, you're not going to be granted entry. If you have excuses, and as we talked about last week, if you have excuses involving COVID, you will be blocked. So what I'm asking, and this is really important about professionalism, right? I need you to listen to yourself, and I need you to listen to the stories that you're telling other people about yourself. Wow, this is important. And as a guide, as an emotional hook, keep asking that question I ask of you so often. Would you supervise you? Would you supervise you? So the students who understand, have done the deep thinking, that's why we did it last week, done the deep thinking about what did go wrong and how they've then addressed what went wrong through, say, professional development or through coaching methodologies. What that means is somebody did the hard yakka. They didn't just sort of say, didn't just stay in the sort of destructive self. They went outward, PD, involved coaching methodologies, got some information outside of themselves to improve themselves. That is an incredibly important professional intervention. So the people who are, the students who are able, and this is life really, the people who are able to summon solutions, they are the winners in life. If you come to a transfer as a solution-focused student, we're doing well. Okay, 6. Here we go. Be clear about what went wrong in the past. Now, I help a lot of students write these transfer documents, and to be frank with you, it takes me about an hour working carefully and respectfully with them to move them from problems to solutions and move them from a blame culture to a responsibility culture. Any prospective new university needs to hear about what went wrong and how you are making it right. So every answer you give when someone says, like me, what went wrong? Every answer you give in response to that question is a proxy for you as a researcher. So let's talk about it. You blame, say, the lack of support. You never saw your supervisor. There was no professional development. Okay, that's fine. That may be accurate. That may be a legitimate series of reasons for what went wrong. But this failure in the past is also about you. And it's a life lesson. If you displace failure onto other people and situations, you stay in that failure. Now, a lot of you know I've just finished a book on failure, coming out next year, very exciting. So I've just finished a book. So I've been living in the failure studies literature, living in failure for a year, and it's been a great experience. But what I've developed in that book is a concept called failure literacy. And my argument is that emotions, quite complicated, powerful emotions like shame and like blame, are signifiers to a human that they're about to enter a potential failure literacy moment. Let me explain. Too often in life, when failure happens, we ignore it, we marginalize it, or we displace it onto other people. That's the most common response. I'm arguing for something different. I'm arguing that we sit in the failure. We sit in the emotions. We don't displace them, we sit in the emotions. And when we do that, when we sit and reflect, we're gaining a literacy about research, about teaching, about universities, about power, and about life. So be clear about what went wrong in the past and claim your role in it. Sit in the failure. And once you sit in the failure, you can therefore summon failure literacy. And what failure literacy does is it provides the scaffolding to learning. Everyone talks about, we learn through failures. How? How do we do that? And what failure literacy does is it allows you to understand the emotions and provide a scaffold to get out of them and move to a learning experience. Now, I've had students write 8, 10, 12, 20 pages of a letter cataloguing what everybody else has done to them. And that's what's created the long candidature. All these other people have done all this stuff. And just to give you one example of, this is many, many years later, I still remember this. A student put in one of those letters, I was unable to complete my PhD because my former university refused an $8,000 registration for a conference in the United States. So I couldn't finish because my university knocked back an $8,000 registration for a conference. Now, remember who you're talking to. You're talking to academics in a career of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years that have never and will never have a chance to probably go to a conference or, certainly go to an international conference. Remember the financial parameters of international higher education. People are being sacked. What do you think is more important? An academic being able to stay and work, or you going to an $8,000 registration conference? Now, that answer will tell us a lot about you. Okay, so what I want us all to think about, good time to do this too, think about rights and privileges and rights and responsibilities, and always sort of keep connected to understand the context, colleagues, of this frightening, toxic, name-calling, appalling international higher education environment at the moment. That's the context in which your supervisors and prospective supervisors are working. And I'm recording this pretty deep in December. Normally I'm the only person I've never had a Christmas off, but normally I'm the only person that works through December. But can I say, as I've been emailing colleagues about teaching and research and all sorts of things, I'm stunned. I'm not getting any automated returns back. Phil will be back in the office on the 5th of January, rock and roll team. I haven't got one of those. So that gives you a sense that academics are not taking holidays. They're having a lot of time away from their families, and they live in perpetual fear of a restructure. So let's be really clear about you, what went wrong in your past, and how you are managing it in the present. 7. Here we go. This is the big one. What is your plan to completion? This is the big one. I need to see a plan, how you believe you are going to finish. This is full on backward mapping. What have you done? What's left to go? And be clear and precise in the timeline to complete those tasks. We need to see a timeline. If you don't give me this completion plan with that sort of granular detail, you won't be granted a transfer. If you don't know how you're going to finish, we can't help you. Okay, 8. What do you need to finish? This is the resourcing question. You're going to be asked a resourcing question, so you're going to be asked questions about money, you're going to be asked questions about facilities. Yes, you're going to need supervisors, and the transfer doesn't occur if you haven't got a good couple of supervisors. But you'll also be asked questions about software and hardware and library support and editing support and author processing fees, all this sort of stuff, field work perhaps. And you need to have a list of resources that you will require to finish, resourcing to finish. Obviously, the less you need, the more likely your transfer is to be approved. But it also must be accurate. So if you transfer, I don't need nothing. I don't need nothing. And then you transfer and all of a sudden you need to go to a synchrotron. That's going to be an incredibly messy situation. And that's why most transfers are also signed off by somebody like a head of school or head of department. Now, I've been head of school. I always remember the forms. Section 9, the head of school filled in for everybody that was admitted, transfers or straight through from another program. We would have a section of the form. We assess the budget. Have we got the budget? Right? And if we haven't got the budget, I refuse the enrolment. Now, Jamie, as you know, is a head of school. He gets a section of the form. Has he got the budget? Yes or no? So heads of school that, are trying to not sack people are looking very carefully at every budget line. Okay, so be aware, make the case for resourcing, make it accurate, and know that that too can be a deal breaker. 9. Please remember that the university is doing you a favour and they're taking a risk. Now, this is probably my most important tip, and this is really not even about content to present, but it's about form and tone and the language you use in your professional presentation for the transfer. Remember, something has gone wrong in your previous university, and we'll never know all the details from all the different perspectives. We'll never know that. Every now and again, it is rare, but every now and again, the former supervisor contacts the new supervisor with some stuff. But can I say, someone who's got those as dean, but also as the new supervisor, I always try and be respectful of the previous supervisor, thanking them for their time and for their information and their expertise. But it's also very important to me, and wishing them well. But it's also very important for me that once a student has been transferred, that we give them a second chance. We give them a clean second chance. So just know that most of the time we make a decision about a transfer and we've got your version of events. We've got ethics documents, we've got IP, but we haven't got a full picture, okay? But remember, when you're moving to a new university, we are doing you a favour, okay? And to give you the scope and scale of this, as we all know, in the doctoral space, 50% of students that start don't finish, 50% attrit. And the key thing we have to work out, and this is a hard one, is when you approach us about a transfer, do you really need to stop the program? So in other words, are you not taking a breath and going, you know what, I'm out? Are you simply transferring, and you're transferring the problem rather than actually leaving the program because you can't or won't do it? I know they're very, very hard conversations to have with yourself and others, but they're pretty important at the point of transfer. We have to assess, do you want to do this, or are you just transferring because you think it's the right thing to do? Okay? Remember, a dean, a higher degree coordinator, an associate dean, research and supervisors, let alone the remarkable professional staff, are about to put a hell of a lot of work in to help you get where you need to be. Transfers add complexity to every stage of the candidature, admissions, progression, and of course, examination. So all I'm asking from you is a bit of kindness, a bit of reflection, a bit of compassion, and come to the professional experience with that tone. These people are doing the work for you. They get absolutely nothing out of doing the work for you except caring for you, okay? Now, in the old days, say even 2 years ago, I used to have students explain to me in some great detail about how much money the university would receive for their completion. You still hear that every now and again, like a student, I'm important as university. And of course, you're important because you're our future. You're an important human being doing important research, and we care for you on that basis. But the notion that you're worth a lot of money to the university at the completion is of course wrong. And what I used to do is on a whiteboard actually now present, this is the money, right? So this is what it costs, this is the fee offset, these are the allowances, this is what it costs for the library, and just go down the list, right? And this is the money we receive when you complete. And show the student. And then once that's sort of done, that transactional nonsense sort of stops. The sort of capitalism stuff like, well, you owe me because the university is going to receive a lot of money when I complete. No, actually, the university is subsidising you. The taxpayers are subsidising you. We care for you because we believe in your future. So stop the transactional stuff. If we hear the transactional stuff, we lose the will to live. So in a transfer, remember what's occurring. There is that payment at the end. And so when you leave your institution, you are taking that final payment away from one institution and you are giving it to another. So please remember that the old institution is losing something, and the new institution, while it's gaining that payment, is also losing something. A supervisor is about to have the worst 6 months of their lives to help you get through. Okay, they get nothing out of it. They might get a completion. We'll talk about that in a second, but they're not getting much out of it. Okay, therefore, building the respectful relationship with your new supervisors and with the professional staff is incredibly important. Now, your new supervisor will get a completion on their record. That doesn't mean as much as it used to in the old days. For the group that it does mean a great deal to, that's often the senior lecturer group in most national systems. Now, the problem with this is what's called rescue supervision. That's what you are. Rescue supervision is the toughest supervision you do. And if you're being supervised by senior lecturers who are less experienced in doctoral studies and doctoral education, you can see the problem that can occur. So the group that often will say, yes, I'll take the student on, are senior lecturers because they do need the completion, but they're often the most inexperienced. So just be aware of that. There are no easy publications. This is not an easy completion. So therefore, you need to explain why you will not be a risk to your new university. You will be a good citizen. So manage the tone for me, okay? And 10, the stories you've been telling yourself have to stop. Now, my final mantra is a pretty important one, not only for PhD students, can I say, but for everybody. I've seen thousands of students move between universities and move between supervisors, and then they go on to fail at the new university and with the new supervisors, okay? And the reason they've moved and then fail again is because they didn't address the problems in themselves. They didn't address the problems in the project. They didn't address the problems in the research. See what's happening? So in our personal life, let's just move to our personal life for a moment. A divorce doesn't solve a problem if the problem is you. So you'll keep going into new relationships and they will keep ending badly because the problem is actually you. Now, I work with students on the best days of their life and the worst days of their life. And when I'm dealing with transfer students, I'm always interested in the stories that these students tell about themselves, about their former supervisors, their former university, the support structure around them. I listen to the stories. Now, if you remain invested in those stories, then all the problems will continue with you and they will stop you finishing in the present. All those problems from the past, you're still carrying and will present again in the new institution. As I always say, look, you may change the curtains, you may change the carpet, but you're still living in the same house. So, this is your opportunity to be different. Wow. This is an opportunity to draw a line under the bad stuff and go again. So the case you're presenting must be about speed. This is a speedy completion, and every day you're enrolled in that university, you're costing the university money. So unless you can be quick and you have a plan, the university can't take the risk. Remember, and this is the failure literacy moment again, you have failed to complete at your previous university. So what's changed? What's changed to enable success today? This will be a public transfer. We have to do this by national legislation. Deans talk to each other to get the RTP days matched and so forth. Government reporting, yep. But you see, what really matters here is this is a second chance. And in life, you so rarely get a second chance. In universities, you so rarely get a second chance. Transfers are tough on everyone, but all I'm asking you to do is do the interior work for me, summon failure literacy, work out IP, work out ethics compliance, and have a quick and precise timeline to completion. That is what you need for a transfer. There are so few second chances in academic life. I wish you well with yours. I wish you love, light and peace. Tia.